Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot.
Welcome to Left of Black. I am your host, Mark Anthony Neal. We're here in the John Hope Franklin Center at Duke University, and we're joined today by a special guest, Michaela Angela Davis, who is the owner and creator of Mad Free, a salon liberating conversation experience about image, beauty, and power. She is a contributor to CNN. She is an image activist, and in the past, she has been the executive fashion, beauty, and culture editor at Essence Magazine, the editor-in-chief at Honey Magazine, and the fashion director for Vibe Magazine. How are you doing today, Michaela?
I am good to be here with you.
So let's start with the reason why you're visiting the area. Our homie Yaba Blay is doing her work on full display, and so you're going to be part of a keynote panel over at North Carolina Central talking about many of the issues that, of course, you're quite familiar with.
And what's great is that this has been a continuation of a conversation with Yaba, where when I first met, she wasn't Dr. Blay then yet, but when I first met Dr. Blay was at CNN when they had just started the Black in America series, and they did a whole part about on her work, the One Drop Project, and I was in that series, and it was called Who is Black, right? And so.
And this is the work that Soledad O'Brien was doing, pulling all that together.
Yaba was like a central theme in the whole series, and then I was just one of the commentators, and we met, and I mean, physically you can see how it works, right? If we're going to talk about, colorism and complexities, we're on the spectrum, right? But also she's just dope, So there are moments in time where when you physically kind of meet a moment, and because I had been interrogating ideas about narrow narratives around beauty and image and who's got the power and where that power lies and how that intersects with identity politics, we were just the perfect pair. And then so we've done this conversation. So we met through Soledad and that work, and we did a couple panels. Then we have had this conversation at NYU. We've had this conversation in Washington, D.C. And so now bringing, and this is like the South, this land in particular is really is significant. This landscape of the American South, and where colorism and the politics of blackness and safety and whiteness is in this soil.
One of the ways that you describe yourself, the work that you do, is as an image activist, right? And so I want to parse that a little bit, right? Because on the one hand, folks hear activism, and particularly we're talking about, brothers like myself, right? When we hear activism, we're thinking about a particular kind of political activism, right? And I would dare say that there would be black men in particular that might be apt to think that image activism is something that's frivolous, right? What might you say to that, right?
That I can say on air? No, well, on its surface, because the idea of image, I would say now, though, we've gotten to really understand more the power of image than I would say a decade ago, right?
Absolutely.
That the idea that images influence us in really subtle and overt ways.
And how folks view us, right?
And how folks view us and how we view each other. Right. And so the idea of image is not so much about how you present, but how you are perceived. And so when you say that you are in action around expanding that narrow narrative, telling the stories behind images, supporting people who are there advancing. Like so many people are image activists, but they wouldn't define themselves as such. But so I just have decided to define what this is when we are out there clapping back, when images are offensive or erase us, or when we're there kind of supporting when they do. So I think now, particularly given social media and the way that now we exchange images and the way that we create them, I think the idea of being an image activist is much more immediately understood.
I mean, everybody who has an Instagram account has the ability to be an agent in how they're presented in the world.
Which is a breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because when this work started, there was no Instagram, there was no Snapchat, there was no Pinterest, there was, it was largely really interrogating what was happening in terms of images of particularly young Black and brown people through music videos, because it was so powerful, so pervasive, so controlled by corporate platforms, that we needed, dedicated, diligent activism around, because that had become the PR campaign for what is Black youth in America. Right. It's like, so Black women, well, you got daughters, like we were, and then the target changed around sort of the Housewife franchise kind of did another number, or like the reality shows did another number on it. Like the target was moving after music videos.
Love and hip hop.
Right. And before that, I mean, the mother was New York. Like when the reality world saw how extra Black women could be, it was gold. Right. Everything we do is extra. So if you like Ratchet, Black Ratchet is going to be the best Ratchet you have ever seen. Actually, we gave you the word Ratchet. Like there was no Ratchet without Black. So it's whether it's excellence or outrageousness. Blackness amplifies experience, right? So this experience of being dramatic and emotionally violent and unpredictable was television gold, and only Black girls could do it in a certain way. And what was also happening was Black ensemble on television, particularly with women, they were gone in a narrative.
Right, Girlfriends was gone. Living Single was a decade earlier than that.
Exactly.
Right.
So these sort of ensembles of women took their place. And so between music videos and reality television, if you were a Black girl in the world, that was the perception of who you are. You were emotionally violent, you were loud, you were limited, you had some fierce shoes and maybe a good weave, but but other than that, it was really problematic, and it was painful.
Right. I think about how genius Motown was, right? Very consciously trying to craft an image, finding the right Black bodies, if you will, Diana Ross or someone like that to represent that. I go forward to now, and I think I see a distinct generational shift. And one of the places where I think I detected it most strongly recently is the Kendrick Lamar video for Humble, and the response that young Black women had to Kendrick trying in some way to frame how he viewed his desire for Black women, and how it was on one hand viewed as him dictating to young Black women how they should look and how they should be. How did you read that moment?
Well, okay, just full disclosure, I'm a huge Kendrick fan, and I appreciate his honesty.
Okay.
And I appreciate his craft and his skill and his prowess. And moreover, I appreciate the complex conversations that we can have in public now about image and who, and how it's not Black or white. It never was. And one of the tenets of being an image activist is helping to also advance this idea that there's a lot of diversity inside of our diversity, and there's not one person that can speak for all Black women. Like some people feel liberated. Oh my God, stretch marks. Another person,
let alone a Black man.
Word. So, but then there's also, that. I mean, even I see my own limitations. Like I was, I was naively a little appalled that there was an app where you could airbrush. Like, I had no idea. I'm like, oh my God, look at everybody has flawless skin on Instagram, and like their waists are so small. And my friend showed me, like, you literally can take your finger and like change everything, right? And so I was particularly moved by people who were talking about skincare and healthcare, and
Yeah.
like, I mean, and I'm like, oh my God, they're doing the same thing that we used to really clap back against. Is like
Right.
manipulating women's bodies to
Right.
create these unattainable. But here are people doing it for themselves. So who am I to say, you know what? If you're 50 years old, you should show your, I don't know, wrinkles. Says who?
Right, and because it's not unlike the conversations we've had in the past about women who chose to relax their hair versus
right.
women who've gone natural.
That's right.
I mean, these are ongoing conversations,
Right.
right? So in some
Right.
ways, this is nothing new.
No, and the idea, but the idea of black women having agency and complexity is new to everyone other than us.
Yeah.
And even sometimes we are shy to be public about our ideas about ourselves. And bringing it back to the conversation that we're going to have tonight, there's been a lot of, both on women who are on the dark side of the spectrum or on the light skinned side like me, you are so aware of your differences in how you can move through the world that often as someone who is light skinned, I wouldn't say things in public because I'm so interested in protecting my dark skinned sisters who I think
Right.
have it worse. This generation now, we can have these complicated conversations because if we're committed to moving forward, we have to, it does you no service for me to feel, it's not pity, it's awareness of the hierarchy that we've all been participating in. However, if you don't understand, like now I start my story by saying I am the granddaughter of refugees from South Carolina.
Okay.
My grandparents literally ran for their lives from a terrorist cell called the Ku Klux Klan to Philadelphia to save their lives.
Right.
This skin is a result of part of that strategy.
Right. Right.
Light-skinned people rarely went missing in the night. Light-skinned children were not hung on trees, generally. So if I've never had that conversation with you, like this is how I got here. Like my blonde hair and light skin is a result of an American horror story and
Right.
an American love story.
Right. Right.
If I continue to hold that in and just walk around like I know I got to see CNN because I don't scare them because I'm blonde and I can say, you know what I mean? Like I know that's why I know if I look like Yaba, I couldn't have called Dylan Roof a terrorist. I know
gotcha.
that.
I gotcha.
So where we are now is particularly as we build sisterhood is like we can say this out. I can say this out loud to you. Like I know. I mean I know that, but we had been even I had been conditioned to like our brown skinned sisters have it so much harder to shut up, like just be quiet.
Instead
like,
of having the conversation
and
that we need to have.
and also
right?
pretending that I somehow are taking a space that they would give to you, pretending as if the powers that be would cast a Yaba over me. Like, so who are we serving if I go, oh no, thank you, I won't take that platform to help represent us because a darker skinned sister should
Right.
have it, who they ain't never gonna give it to anyway.
Right. And we saw that play out with the debates around the Nina Simone film.
Oh, but that was, why you bring that up? There are two things. I'm so triggered by Nina Simone and Rachel Dolezal. Like those are I'm triggered. Oh my God. I was just so offended by her hair wrap. Like, how you gonna get a hair wrap wrong? Like, I couldn't even get to the nose and the makeup.
The prosthetic, yeah.
How you gonna get a hair wrap wrong? You can't. You can't. Like, how many people had to say yes to that?
Right.
That's
right.
what, you know, that's
Right.
the process. You go to all those people, and one of them a black male, like David Oyelowo was a executive producer.
Sure, right.
Why do you from the continent, brother?
Right. Right.
How's that okay?
Right, and in fact, he circulates in the industry because he has a phenotype that looks a certain kind of way.
And no shade.
Could he look like Martin Luther King?
Listen. Right, but somehow you like. So that's what, you know, things like that are also, we see all the, you know, where patriarchy, sexism, all
right.
that stuff really, But, you know, when talking about, and that's why I'm so, this idea of being an image activist, we're able to kind of get all that stuff in there because particularly in America, to be a black woman, your body holds a lot of these issues, right. Patriarchy, racism, classism, you know, overexposure, erasure, like all of it, yeah.
You mentioned Rachel a second ago, right?
I told you, I mentioned her so you could not mention her.
Who, as we're speaking, of course, is on her little speaking book tour. But you did a piece for CNN in February of 2017, right? And you talked about how you were aware as a kid, you know, when you moved into this neighborhood, how you confused the white people there who didn't quite know what to do with the fact that your skin seemed to look like theirs, but then the features didn't.
Right. And you know what is interesting, because it was more my hair that triggered the confusion.
The blondness of it.
The blonde and the nappiness of it. Like those two things, you don't, blonde and nappy don't go together.
Are you Jewish?
but it was nappy, not curly. I use that word very intentionally. It was not coily or curly like Jewish folks or like Southern Italian. It was nappy like African folks, right? So they had that cacophony was new to them. But what you learned was how limited the vocabulary of blackness was.
Right.
The visual vocabulary, like they could not identify. They just knew my nose wasn't like theirs, but they would never go, oh, that's like an Igbo nose, or what, you know, they just like you. And they did not know that I was black. They did not know who I was until they saw to whom I belonged. Okay. And then by association, the things that were confusing about me made sense. Okay. But it did not break the ignorance. Like there's still so much ignorance around how big blackness can be, and particularly American blackness, because it does, we have, for all kinds of reasons, for strategy, as I told you before, or just sheer people bumping in and loving each other, but how we've identified who is black and what is black, and that we can range from someone like, you know, Lupita or Yaba to me, and all of it is black. Right. And there's a power in that, but there's an intimidation in that, and that's if we continue to do the work that we're doing tonight, we're amongst each other, we're healing and telling truths and building, you know, kind of bridges and connecting in sisterhood. If we do that, it is a direct affront to, and a direct assault on supremacy, because part of the strategy was keep us fighting, keep us getting to be who's closer to, my proximity to whiteness has kept me safer, understood, physically safer, but psychologically, spiritually, does that, whiteness is not safe, whiteness is not interesting, whiteness is not
It's not a sanctuary.
powerful.
It's not a sanctuary. Right.
No, it's not. And to be honest right now, given who's in the White House and the lack of culture, intellect, joy, did I mention culture?
Yes.
Has really advanced this idea for me to even think about, particularly in the context of culture, what is whiteness? Like, what is it producing? What I mean, because if you can say, is it, you know, it's not just, is it capitalism? Is it force? Is it monster trucks and guns? Like, and I'm being really serious. Like, I can see, like, you go to Mexico, and it is full of culture. Like, food and dance and presentation and language and ritual and dress. You go to Korea or Detroit, or you see what culture producing beauty and culture producing things that will define you in human history.
Centuries, down the road.
Culture is power, and I'm literally looking at, particularly white America. I'm not talking about like European I'm not talking about European culture,
Right.
Or French, or what does white American culture produce? And what does it produce that is then loved or cherished or wanted to be experienced by other people?
Right.
The blandness of it is so overt to me now because of who I have to look at in the White House every day. I'm looking at whiteness in a way that it is so bland. Like, where's and you know, James Baldwin used, I remember when I first read Baldwin, he would describe it as blandness, and that we are being sold like it is really the emperor's new clothes. Like, there's no there, y'all.
Yeah.
So every time that we respond to oppression with, you know, with jazz and zoot suits and hip hop and like all this like stuff and beauty, and there's nothing back.
Right.
There's
no
nothing coming
response to
back,
that, right.
but consuming it.
Right.
So we
or
know,
criminalizing.
or appropriating it. But you're not. Like, you come to the party.
Right. What are you bringing?
What are you bringing? And the
What are you
one
bringing?
thing that you can bring that's really interesting and authentic, you know, like some of the music and the dance culture that is in, you know, bluegrass or in Appalachia
Right.
is
Country music.
amazing.
Right.
But it's not even advanced to. I don't know if there's shame because it's poverty and capitalism and is so important to
Right.
whiteness and so. But I'm really, and this is really over the last couple of months of looking at almost 100 days of this administration. What does whiteness do? And why have we all been, like a friend of mine last night at a artist talk, she's an amazing artist, her name's Teresita Fernandez. She did this piece called Fire America. And she made this point that when immigrant students come here, they are told not to speak English. Poor kids. I mean, not to speak their native
Their
tongue.
language, right.
Like, if you're poor, Spanish is bad. But if you're rich, you're celebrated for learning a second language as a
Right.
kid. Like, that's insane. You know, if you're rich, it's like, oh, my child speaks, you know, French and English. But then
I'm going to send him to the Mandarin school. Right.
Exactly. What? It's crazy. So what's interesting now is like all of us, because we have these tools where we can tweet out, yo, my friend, we can all talk about how how crazy this is, and it's not just locked in the academy or locked in essays by, you know, James Baldwin or Zora Neale Hurston. They're in these little places we have to hide to go get, or that they're being hidden from us because they haven't been taught in school. So now we can say, isn't that crazy that your poor Spanish kid in the Bronx is told not to speak Spanish, but if you go, you know, to the Upper West Side, that rich kid is told like
being sent to a language immersion school.
A language immersion school. You can just go to Bronx, just hang out uptown. You know. Oh, I brought up the Bronx. That wasn't intentional. Knowing that that wasn't intentional. I think just being around you and Joe in the Bronx is going to come out, no matter what. But, you know, so we're able to really now, I think because of this joyless, cultureless administration, culture is being illuminated. Mm-hmm. Like, we're leaning in because we know it's power. Like, we know culture is power. And in America, black folks got that.
Right.
We got that. So leaning into where we know our power is because of what's going on over there is really, this is an interesting tension. Or maybe it's just a survival tactic for maybe what's going on there is so crazy that I have to go where I trust black culture and I trust black women, period. And so, because they've done nothing but provide inspiration, empowerment, stamina for me, you know, so, yeah.
You did a poignant video interview last summer where you talked about your relationship to your body. Particularly after the birth of your child.
Yeah.
And let me be honest, you know, cards on the table. I watched that clip a few times.
Okay.
For a bunch of reasons. One, because it generally moved me. But there is, in fact, a moment in the video when I was like, oh. and you know what, you might remember what moment that was. I was like, oh, Michaela, okay.
Wait a minute, which one? No, which one?
This is when you were showing your
Oh, my tattoo?
yeah.
My scars and
Yeah,
my tattoo.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, my Thug Life counter tattoo that I got at 50 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. That I've been in a battle with my body, and so many women have. Especially, I worked in fashion.
Right.
For a while, I was in dance culture as a student, and so those are places that are just so hostile to
because it's all size 2s
imperfection.
and 4s, right?
Yeah. And then even what idea is like, what is perfection, right? So
like when you hear people describe, in the dance world as Missy Copeland being too chunky.
what world is
it's
that?
like, right?
Or how we've seen how they treated the Williams sisters, like the best athletes to ever do that game. Like how they would talk about the bodies of champions. Is just fascinating to me. But fascinating on a lot of levels. But so I was not immune to the toxic environment that just being under such a microscope, particularly working in fashion. I mean, I might have had it anyway. I mean, so many young women and girls have body images and that they don't talk about, particularly if you're a woman of color. We didn't talk about anorexia and bulimia in the 80s, like, if you picked up the 17 magazine. So I never really fully dealt with it. But when I was pregnant, and I had kind of prided myself on having like flawless skin, whatever that is, flawless skin. And the most incredible thing I ever accepted was my daughter left scars, and I carried them in a way that was not anywhere near equal to the gift that she was. And so I needed to just mark it. I just needed to mark it. And so I marked it with a big ass tattoo. Oh, I'm sorry. I've gone all this time without cursing. And it was liberating. I wasn't done, and I think that's important to note, because often in this sort of Instagram-y sort of everyone's got like mottos and mantras and things to say, and I do that too. You check my Instagram, I'm like, oh, it's a process, right? Like just because I put a big old tattoo on my stretch marks doesn't mean that now I'm cured and I just like feel, it means that I made a step and I'm going to make another step, and sometimes I go backwards, and this idea of us not allowing ourselves a process of healing strips away our humanity, and I don't want to do that either, even though I'm super interested in inspiring and empowering us to know how adult we really are. But we're not only, it doesn't, these snapshots of our lives. Everyone's like, oh, you just had such a fabulous time. Yeah, I did, but I was beat up when I got there. So it's also how do we continue to tell the truth while we're also
celebrating, our lives. Yeah. What are you listening to these days?
It's interesting. I've been going back a little bit. I've been listening to Badu. Mama Get Your Gun. Oh, this is just over the last 48 hours. Like almost in repeat. But some of the new music, like I love the new Childish Gambino. I love Anderson .Paak. I love SZA. Like SZA's so dope, and I don't even know she really is. And I just broke my addiction, I would say, to Solange. Like that was my morning. Like I was having that like a cup of coffee. Don't touch my, like I literally, because my neighborhood, the colonization is so real and so thick and so fast. Like my actual street, there are 3 buildings. No, I'm in Brooklyn.
Well, okay, same story.
Yeah, even worse, because Harlem has less to build on, meaning there's less empty lots, right? And there's more big, multi-occupant buildings with different kinds of people. It's harder to move out that many people as fast, but it's happening. I used to listen to food, like I would I would rock FUBU in my head just to go get my morning coffee, just so I would be okay. So Solange gave my daughter said it was this generation's miseducation.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what?
Wow. That might be right.
That might be
That
right.
might be right.
So I broke my daily addiction to that. I love the Sampha process. That I love his new album. But somehow these last couple of days, Badu's just the illest. Like, she really is.
And she's done it on her own terms.
That part.
And I mean, there's only a handful of our artists that you can think about.
And her Snapchat, she's been
Yeah.
posting these crazy little quick, they're like beautiful little art short films.
Yeah.
And she's got this new like gold jewelry that's in her mouth, and she's just like, and I'm just like, go Badu, like, do you?
Right.
Like,
Right.
and she's always done that. So she's just a remarkable talent. But yeah, in terms of the newness, that's where I'm at. I'm in that sort of Sampha, SZA, Solange space. Yeah. What are you listening to?
What am I listening to? I still listen to a lot of Rhapsody, her last EP. I'm listening to Solange. I just started listening to Sid the Kid's solo album, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a good moment for the music, right? It's a good moment for the culture. Right?
For the culture. And then, I mean, it's going to get more, like, the art world is on fire. Like, people, like,
all them Negroes that just won Pulitzers.
I know.
Black woman with a
Liz,
Broadway play.
Yes.
And, yeah,
but Liz the bomb.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, you know, also Edward Enfenel, like the first Black man to be ahead of any Condé Nast magazine at British Vogue.
No, it's a great moment. In
Yeah,
that regard.
I mean, you know what? Here it is. It's a better moment. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if it's great. We're still in such denial and battle. Like, but it's better. And I feel like if we continue to use our culture to lift us up and move us forward, because again, we can trust Black culture. Yeah. Like, we can trust it. It is tried and true. And in this moment of attack, in this moment of, you know, re-triggered terror. I have a 92-year-old aunt who was also a refugee from Jim Crow South, completely traumatized. She said that she feels like the Klan are in suits and in the White House, and that is not not a stretch.
Right.
So there is trauma being triggered by this administration, by this moment, in a way that is, I don't even know what, we're gonna have to study it, but our culture is where we can go, we can dip in and expand, and that's where Black power is. Like, that's where the power is. Yeah.
We've been joined today by Michaela Angela Davis. Thank you for joining us here at Left of Black. This was great.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Black lights and booze burn when I record for Watts. And every black like Troy Davis who never had a fair shot. All black everything, everything black. Culture over everything, y'all, we taking it back.